Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse and to another Warehouse interview. Tonight, Ashley Geisler and myself take on Dave Tice. Dave was in the band Buffalo, Australian band, top-notch stuff. We looked at them on the Little Known Band show. Ashley and I are here to talk to Dave. We want to hear from you in the chat. Let's do it.
Piling on the power chords and pure pandemonium. Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse and to another Warehouse interview. Looky here, ladies and gentlemen, we have a musical legend here tonight, and we're not talking about Ashley, but Ashley's here as well. We have Dave Tice here from the band Buffalo. Now, if you remember a while back, we did a Little Known Bands That You Should Know show, and Ashley presented Buffalo, correct, Ashley? It was you, correct? Yes.
It was me, yes.
Ashley... Definitely. So let me tell Dave what we do. I should tell him that. We have a show on Wednesdays, Dave, where we talk about little known bands you need to know. Now, Ashley presented you, and it's an hour show, and so we have different guests on. So the guest that's coming on picks 3 bands, 2 tracks apiece. So we feature that band or bands during the show, and it's all about turning people onto stuff. Now, Buffalo, your band, which is absolutely, in fact, that show that Ashley was on, in which he promoted your band, people were absolutely knocked out by it. I mean, that show, Ashley, you can back me up. The reception of us playing Buffalo in the Warehouse was fantastic, because nothing against Buffalo, but you were virtually unknown here in the States. You didn't really get any right. So the fact that we played it, or at least Ashley played it, people were just blown away from it. And based on that, it's like, wow, Ashley said, well, maybe we can get Dave on here. And I'm going, let's do it, because I think even though people don't know your history or know you very much in the outside of Australia, I'm just saying, why don't we have you on and talk about some things? So that's why you're here.
Here we are.
Here we are. So I'll start out. Well, let's start out at the beginning. For one, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
Grant's Rock Warehouse. So we've already.
I believe you're having a snowstorm over there. Is that right?
Well, if on the East Coast we're having a blizzard, but where I'm at, I'm in Central Ohio.
All right.
So it's not too bad. It's not maybe an inch. Yeah, but on the East Coast of the States, it's very.
Eat your heart out, Grant. Here in Sydney, it's 35 degrees Celsius.
Yes.
Of course. Well, it's summer over there.
You guys are way
winter's coming. Winter's coming.
Well, our winter is about the equivalent of your summer, I believe.
I know. I'm just going to be quiet. Why don't you 2 boys just rub it in? Rub it in.
You're outnumbered a bit here, mate.
I am outnumbered. So what's happening? Well, first of all, Dave, how are you? For one,
I'm fine. I'm fine. I just turned 75.
Wow.
You look great.
I'm still alive.
I'm still alive. That's what I say if I go out. People go, "Hey, Grant, how you doing?" I'm still alive.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite phrases. You know,
you made it another day.
I was talking to somebody this morning, my local news agent, and I said, you know, the world is going to pot, man. It's terrible out there, you know. And he said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, 75, you know, I probably wouldn't have to put up with it for too much longer, you know. And he laughed and he said, ha, 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 you got plenty left yet, mate, you know. And I said, yeah, don't tell me that. I said, don't tell me that.
So I'm going to start out early, Dave. So we're going back in time, getting the time machine. So you immigrated to Australia in 1964, is that correct?
Correct. Your researcher is very good.
And you started your musical career in Brisbane with the band Head in the late 60s, is that correct?
Yeah. I must say to you, though, Grant, that before Head, which was like pretty much my first foray into getting close to being in a professional band,
Hmm.
I was in 2 or 3 other bands leading up to that.
Of course, you're
You
right.
know, that basically sort of spent their life in the garage. You know.
Well, since so what was your I'm going to say what was your come to Jesus I always ask this to people that come on the show. What was your come to Jesus moment? What was that moment in your life when you were just a wee boy when you're like 13? You know what I mean? When you
Yeah,
heard a
yeah.
band, was your moment the Beatles on Ed Sullivan? What was your moment that really opened you up to music and made you decide that this is a career path that you wanted to take?
Well, I think there's two points I should make here, Grant. The first one is that I saw the Rolling Stones on a black and white TV set, which was owned by a friend of mine from school, about a year before my family migrated out here to Australia.
Mhm.
And up until that point, what I'd be hearing it was people like Cliff Richard, and Tommy,
The
whatever his bloody
Shadows,
name was.
probably. Shadows were
Well,
big,
yeah,
weren't
well,
they?
yeah. But to be honest with you, I didn't really hear a lot of that lead up music because my family, we were living in the country. My father was a farm worker at the time, and we didn't have all those modern conveniences like electricity and all that sort of business. You know,
Hmm.
our lighting was gas, and we never owned a TV. We had a sort of portable radio that used to sit on the mantelpiece and play the BBC World Service or something. You know. Uh, but nonetheless, as I say, I visited a friend, and his family were more like quite a bit ahead of us, and they had a black and white television set, and the Rolling Stones were doing "Not Fade Away" on this TV show. And at the time, I thought, "Wow, what's this?" You know, I kind of like this, you know. And then when we moved to Australia, we spent the first 18 months of our lives in Australia in a migrant hostel. You know, we were what was known as 10-pound POMs at the time. That's because we came to Australia on the assisted passage scheme, okay?
Oh, okay.
It cost £10 for my father, £10 for my mother, and myself and my 2 brothers travelled for free on an aeroplane to come to Australia. And while I was on the hostel, I met a lot of other English kids who had come over with their families as well, you know, and they had record collections, stuff that I'd never heard of. And what really got me interested were people like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf. I don't know if you can see that.
I see
I'm wearing
Howlin' Wolf.
I'm wearing the colours, you know.
You're,
uh,
damn it, Dave. I'm proud of you wearing the colors. Yes, of course.
well, you know, people like that, you know. There are other bands as well, Jimmy James and the Vagabonds, you know, Robert Johnson, of course. But those records were really what sort of made me think to myself, you know, of course, at the same time, I started listening to bands like the Animals and the Yardbirds, you know, who were really sort of starting to break in England and the Rolling Stones. And I started to realise that there were a lot of connections between those bands and guys like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Robert Johnson and all that, because they played a lot of that stuff. And I thought, wow, you know, if these blokes can do this, maybe I can as well, you know.
Hmm.
So I conned my father into buying me a guitar, which happened to be a very cheap $20 acoustic guitar that was a bit like a sort of a brick with a bunch of strings on it. You
The
know?
action on it was probably like this.
Oh, well, I think you're underestimating there, actually. You know? But anyway, I spent many quiet hours by myself in my bedroom trying to learn the 3 chords that I felt were necessary to become a rock and roll superstar. and you know, and the funny thing is that, you know, when I got my first job, I
Mhm.
got my father to sign, I guess, a guarantor on a hire purchase agreement, which allowed me to buy a Vox AC30 amplifier and a Burns Black Bison guitar.
I know exactly what
Uh,
you're talking about. The
yeah, yeah.
AC30. So were you okay? So were you in Australia or were you still in the UK? Wait a minute.
No, I was in Australia at this point. Yeah,
So
yeah,
they
yeah,
were selling Voxes in Australia. So they had a Vox dealer
yeah.
in Australia and they were importing Burns into Australia as well.
Well, they're both obviously British companies.
Yeah.
Okay, and you know, Australia was a British colony, basically, so part of the empire.
Okay.
So, so they probably had more going on in trade with England than they were with the US, for instance.
I mean, I'm just talking guitars for a second.
Yeah.
You brought it up,
Again.
damn it. And now I have to talk guitars. I think Burns in the United States got a release like through Baldwin. I think Baldwin imported Burns guitars, repackaged them.
Yeah.
But I don't think, because we're talking, what year were you talking when you got that guitar?
Well, 1966, 67.
Yeah, they were probably just starting to import those then. And then
Yep.
Thomas Organ by late 66 was starting to import. Well, they originally imported Voxes. Then they started to do production here, and we started to make them Thomas Organ made Voxes here in the States. So I guess that all makes sense that, yeah. But that's pretty late for the AC30 though. I mean, 66, they were starting to do transistor amps about that. Anyway, let's get back. Dave, you start talking about guitars, then I'm going to get geeky and talk guitars. So I'm going to try to rein it in because Ashley's down there going, Grant, calm down.
Yes.
No, this is rock and roll, man.
It's rock and roll,
Calm down
Dave.
here.
Damn it, I love it. But anyway,
I
you
must
got
say to you,
the
go on.
AC30. Did you have the chrome stand with your AC30?
Oh, no.
No chrome stand, damn it.
No
All
chrome
right.
stand. No.
All right.
No. That amplifier got me into a bit of a trouble, because one of the earliest gigs I ever did playing guitar was in what they call an RSL club, which is a return servicemen's club, okay? And just before I did the gig, I got a copy of Mad magazine, and they had something funny in it about Germany and the swastika, and I thought, oh, this swastika is pretty cool, and there was a sticker there, and I stuck it on the front of my amp, okay? Started playing this gig, and this 50-year-old, 60-year-old bloke ran up, blowing steam out of his ears, and insisted that we stop and get the hell out of there because he'd actually fought in the war, okay? And I mean, I was completely...
You rebel.
I was completely oblivious to all this.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, oh, this is quite amusing. Anyway, we got kicked out of our first gig because I had this swastika on my Vox amp.
No.
That poor Vox. It was disgraced right there.
Oh, man,
Ashley, go ahead. If you have something, don't let
George,
me run
I do.
the whole damn show.
I've got plenty. Don't worry about that. I have plenty.
Go ahead.
Okay, Dave, when Buffalo first started and you guys were known as Head, you guys had dual vocalists on the first album, Dead Forever, didn't you? Wouldn't be many bands around Australia at that time that had dual vocalists.
Well, actually, I must bring you up here because there were a couple. Number one, the Valentines, who had Vince Lovegrove and Bon Scott, who everybody knows who Bon Scott is. And there was another band going around Sydney at the time called Flake, and they had a male singer and a female singer, So we weren't that unusual, but, Alan Milano was the other vocalist, who I must confess to you, I always considered to be a much more technically proficient singer than I was, in fact, I've always been an admirer of Alan's singing, but, he had other plans in mind, which didn't include being in a heavy rock band, which is why he ended up moving on. And I ended up carrying the load as a vocalist from then on. And going back to Grant there, about what we were talking about with the amplifier and the guitar I bought, I only ever got to do maybe 2 or 3 shows using that equipment before I became a singer. Okay. And because the bands that I sort of started getting in had guitar players who shit on me, okay?
They were, it's like, yeah, you guys just go ahead and play. I'll sing.
That's right.
I get it.
And I loaned my guitar and amp to a good friend of mine who is a very good guitar player, and we worked together in a band for a while, and he actually used that setup for years. In fact, I can't even remember if I ever got it back to tell you, but it doesn't matter. That
was the good old days, Dave, when people loaned stuff out and you never saw it again.
Well, I wasn't worried about it because, when I started singing, things started happening for me in a more sort of positive way than what had been happening before when I was trying to pretend I was a guitar player, you know.
Well, how did Buffalo start, though?
Well,
I mean, how did
it's
that
a bit
come
of-
about? Because you had all those different bands, and Buffalo
Yeah.
started when? Because
Well, about 1970, 71 is when Buffalo
Okay.
started. And the reason is because myself and Peter Wells, who was the bass player of Head, we moved to Sydney after having sort of got to the point in Brisbane where we thought, this place is too small for us guys. We got to get out of here. So we moved to Sydney and hooked up with some players down here. One of whom was a guy called John Baxter, who was a guitar player. Now Peter and I, we were determined we were going to be a blues band, but I remember, we auditioned John in this basement in a terrace house in Sydney, and he came along, and we realised very quickly that actually he was not a blues player. He seemed to have trouble counting to 12, and if you're a blues player, you have to be able to count to 12 because so much of it is 12 bar, okay? But what he was playing all this riff stuff, loud, noisy riffs, and we thought, what's going on here, Pete and I, we walked outside for a while for a cigarette, and we had a bit of a discussion, and I said, what's going on here, man? This guy can't play blues, And anyway, Pete turned to me, he said, I know, he said, but it's kind of interesting what he's doing. I think we should give it a go. So that was the start of Buffalo, Simple as that, and I must tell you that in my opinion, those ways of bands starting are much better than trying to come up with a plan and put something together to do it, okay? Because there's no bullshit, okay? And that's the thing about Buffalo, was that we were determined to be our own band, not like any other band. And with John, we found a way to do that. Because there weren't any other bands around doing the sort of stuff that we were doing in Australia. There were a couple of bands that were loud and raucous, but they were more traditional rock and roll bands, you know what I'm saying? People like Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, you may have heard of, they're quite a well-known Australian band. Now Thorpe, his band and him, he was determined to be very, very loud, and we were determined to be fucking louder.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the quote of the night right there. I haven't heard Billy Thorpe.
How did you guys get signed to Vertigo? I mean, you were the first Australian band outside of the Europe and the UK connection to get signed to them. Is that correct?
That's what the story I've heard. Yeah. I mean, I can't really second guess it. I think we were, but I mean, the thing was that we were signed. Buffalo was signed to a company called Phonogram, who were just one more label based around the Philips Corporation, you know what I mean? And of course, Vertigo was a label which was part of the same stable. And what our recordings, the first album, got sent over to England for where the head office or whatever it was, you know what I mean, for all that sort of stuff. And we got this message back through our record company here, oh, guys, they would like you to go on the Vertigo label. And we thought, oh, well, personally, none of us were really particularly worried about what bloody label we were on, because we just wanted to get a record out, And we were naive young guys who thought the world was opening up for us. And today Sydney, tomorrow the moon. Any record deal was going to be fine with us. And I'm paying the price for that now, of course.
You didn't read what you wrote on the. You didn't read what you signed on the contract. Is that what you're trying to say?
We all we saw was record deal, okay. and I'll tell you, Grant, that I have now a copy in my files of that original contract. All right, and it's 2 foolscap pages. 2 foolscap pages. Okay, think about that. And I'll tell you what it spells out. It spells out all of our responsibilities and none of theirs. Okay.
Your story is like a lot of these bands from that era.
Yeah,
Where the
man,
record companies take advantage of the artist, you know.
but it's not changed really very much at all.
No,
It's
probably
always
not.
been like
Read
that.
you need to read your contract, kids. That's what we're saying. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I went to England, as you may be aware, after the Buffalo disbanded in 1977, and joined a band called the Count Bishops over there, who had a recording deal with a company called Chiswick. Yeah, I did 3 albums with them, and when I came back to Australia in '84, by that time I'd realised very plainly how things worked in the record business. And I determined, and I've never signed a recording contract since that day. Okay, I'm talking 1984. I've signed no recording or publishing deals since then. You can sit on this and spin.
And rotate.
Rotate, that's it. Rotate.
Well, let me ask you this real quick before we keep going on. But why did the album Volcanic Rock, Only Want You for Your Body, those are considered cult classics. I mean, they didn't do anything here, but like I said, when we played those and Ashley brought those on the channel, we played tracks from them. We were just absolutely stunned. I think, everybody that's watching this program, please do yourself a favor and at least go check out those Buffalo albums. Now, I don't know if they've ever... See, Ashley would know. Were those ever reissued or anything?
They were. On various bootleg labels around the world, they were.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Yep.
And then Aztec Music's here, who's owned by Gil Matthews, the drummer from Village and Aztecs, he's reissued them.
Okay.
Put extra tracks on them. And they're the ones to get if you really want to see Buffalo with all the extra
That's fantastic. But why did you guys... Go ahead.
Go on. No, you go ahead, Grant.
No, I was going to say, why did you guys break up in 1977?
Well, one of the great things about the music business is that once you get to a certain point, this is also to do with the mores of society and culture as they go along, is that you start to be surrounded by people who want to push you into different directions, okay? And one of the things that used to happen with Buffalo is our record company and our management were continually trying to make us be a more commercial band. They wanted radio airplay. We didn't get radio airplay. We sold albums, okay? Consequently, as we were being pushed and prodded to do these things, we were also in a position where we'd got to the stage with our touring in Australia where we were supporting an 8-ton truck full of PA gear and lights, 3 road crews, a manager, an agent, a publicist, okay? And we were trying to pay ourselves a couple of dollars as well. Mm-hmm. Now, so you get to the point where commercial considerations start to decide your decisions, okay? And very soon, by the time we got past Only for Your Body, Pete Wells, who was the bass player, was getting very itchy feet, and he was basically had enough of it. And he soon moved on and formed a band called Rose Tattoo,
okay,
where he played slide guitar, which was a thing that he always wanted to do. I continued on with a couple of different guitar players, all of whom they're all great guitar players in their own right, but the whole reason and philosophy of Buffalo as a band was being completely torn apart. And I got to the stage where I thought, why am I still doing this? I hate this. It is not what I want to be doing. And the offer came up for me to go to England and join the Bishops. And I thought, wow, this is my escape route, and I took it, and I spent a happy 7 years working in England, 3 of them with the Count Bishops and then 4 with a band called the Cobras over there. And basically, I hate to sound like an egomaniac, although I am, of course. But the fact is that when I left, I don't think they were able to find another point of focus to build the band around. This is always the way, right? We did 5 albums. The first three, to me, are what Buffalo is all about. The last two were where we were being pushed in areas we didn't want to, or I personally didn't want to go anyway. You know, I kind of lost I must say I've lost my train of thought here. So ask me another question quick.
Ashley, jump in.
Yeah, sure. Those last two albums, Mother's Choice and Average Rock and Roller, for me as a fan, I still think they got some merit of Buffalo. I mean, for me, there's some great tracks on there. I mean, I like tracks like Honey Babe from Mother's Choice, and another track I really like is I like You Say from Average Rock and Roller.
Yeah, well, don't get me wrong. Actually, I'm not saying those things have no merit. You know, it's just that it's not. You know, I didn't want to do that. Personally, I felt betrayed and pushed into areas I didn't want to go, and I'm sure that this is not a novel story. There, you know, a lot of people in this business would have been through the same thing, you know. But one of the reasons I loved being in a band was because I was my own man. Okay, I had nobody for quite some time telling me what I should do. They were looking at me and going, "Wow, you did that? Wow, cool." You know what I mean? And I personally don't like to be at the beck and call or under the orders of anybody, and I still don't like it, and I don't do it. You know, simple as that. If you don't like what I'm doing, well, you know, piss off and leave me alone.
I get it. Yeah, you wouldn't be.
Dave, Dave, were Buffalo ever on Countdown at all? I got told some people say you were, and I say that some told me that you weren't. What's the real story?
We did it once.
Okay.
Right? Only once, and I'll tell you why we only did it once. Because when we went to Melbourne, which is where Countdown was videoed or filmed or whatever it was at the time, Molly Meldrum, of course, was the man. Okay.
Yep.
Who, you know, Molly Meldrum, everybody knows Molly Meldrum, he's the man. And our record company put together a, what would you call it, like a meet and greet kind of, you know, thing for all the local bullshitters down in Melbourne, okay? And Molly Meldrum came along and everybody was having a great old time on the record company's dollar, you know. And John, our guitar player, who was never good at holding his alcohol, imbibed liberally. Okay, he imbibed liberally. And anyway, he noticed Molly Meldrum sitting on a couch there, holding court or whatever he was doing, and he wandered over, he plonked himself down next to him, he said, "G'day, Molly. I hear you're a putter." Did you get that, Grant? I hear you're a putter. Which is an Australian slang word for someone of a slightly different sexual persuasion. Okay.
Yeah, I don't. And how'd that go over?
Oh, it went over like a lead balloon, man. It went over like a shit in a perfume factory.
See, Ashley likes that slang term. Ashley likes that.
Bread and butter.
Anyway,
It's his bread and butter.
we got to do, you know, the most important music television show in Australia, national, once.
Yep.
After that, because we were already booked in, but we were never asked to go back again. And you know what? We didn't really care about that too much at the time. And when I look back now, I think we might have, you know, shit in our own nest there.
So did Buffalo sign a 4-record deal? Is that what you had to do? That's why you had to do the other 2 records?
No, we did a initially it was a 3-album deal. Okay, with singles if they decided to put them out, which they did a couple of times, and then it came to the end of that period of time, and we were the record company wanted to extend. They had an extension clause in there if they wanted to take it up. And I'll tell you, this goes back a little bit to what I was talking about before I lost my train of thought. I was actually called to go into the record company to meet with the hoi polloi, whatever, I don't bloody A&R, whatever the bloke was, to discuss the re-signing, you know, accepting that contract. And you know what they said to me? They said, "Dave, we don't think you need the rest of the band. So how about if you just sign and we don't worry about the rest of the guys? What do you think about that?
That sounds like a similar story that I've heard before. Think of the Motels. Same thing.
Right.
They wanted Martha Davis. They didn't want the rest of the band. You,
You know-
you're not the only. That's happened probably more than you think.
Oh, I don't think so. I reckon it happens all the time because
well-
record companies, I know what you're saying, but my response to that was I was gobsmacked. I thought, you can't be serious. You're talking about a band here, not some solo singer with a bunch of backing session players. We've got a band, and the reason why it was successful up to that point was because it was a band, So I refused to do that. And I must tell you that the rest of the band never knew about this until I pointed it out to them a couple of years ago. All right, because to me, there's got to be honour amongst. If you want to be working with people, you've got to be truthful with them. You must must trust them, and they must trust you. And if you lose that, then I'm afraid that you've lost part of the reason for actually having a band. So. But as I say, we were, from there on, that's when the push from record company and management was because they wanted hit records, okay? We weren't going to get many hit records. We sold lots of albums, but that didn't seem to matter.
No, they want a hit record.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, I used the four-letter Anglo-Saxon word earlier on in this interview, which I won't keep repeating, but nevertheless, it's on the tip of my tongue continually. Okay.
We're picking up what you're putting down. I'm sure everybody else is watching this show. But yeah, it's I can't blame you.
No.
And
When you came back, Dave, in '84, you formed a band called the Headhunters with Mick Cox, who was also in Rose Tattoo, and Paul Babley from the early days of Buffalo and the Counterbishops. How did that group come together?
Well, Coxie and I just come back from the UK, and Mick Cox had just come back from the UK, from the US, where he'd been working with a band called Heaven. And,
Yes.
We knew each other and just caught up. And Mick said, I'm not in a band at the moment. If you're not coming down to my place, we'll have a bit of a jam. So that's what we did. And he knew a guy who could play drums. It wasn't Paul Balby at that time, let me tell you. In fact, the drummer that you may be thinking of is Paul DeMarco, who
Yes,
is
sorry.
on the Headhunters album. But anyway, it wasn't him at that point. So we just got together with a couple of mates and started jamming in Coxie's basement, until the neighbours got pissed off with us and told us to shut up, And at that point, we walked. Well, I mean, we weren't really a band. We were just jamming, We walked up to the road to the Bondi Royal Hotel, where we knew that the publican had a back room with a couple of pool tables in that never got used. And we asked him if we could, come up and jam there. And he said, "Oh, okay, yeah, no worries." He said, as long as you let me allow people in. So we thought, well, if you're going to let people in, you better supply us with a bottle of scotch.
at least.
At least. So we did that for a couple of days. And before we knew it, the place was getting really, really packed. And we ended up doing we used to do Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon after a while, and we were getting paid and getting a bottle of scotch. And believe me, I'm glad that it didn't last too long, because I would have been a complete alcoholic by now. but anyway, so we needed a name if we were going to be sort of actually doing a gig, which we were doing. So we called it the Headhunters, and really it rolled on from there. I mean. It's another one of those situations where we didn't start by forming a plan and saying, let's put something together around this plan. We just started playing together, enjoyed it, and it kind of just took on a life of its own, and that's, to me, that's the real deal, that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm. Well,
You're very quiet, Grant. Speak up, mate.
I was going to ask you about the Bishops real quick. So
Yeah, please do.
we're kind of bouncing all over, but so you went from Australia to London.
Yeah.
And what was the punk? Because that was what was that, 77 or 78 when you went to the
77, March 77.
What was the punk scene? God, words are hard. The punk scene like compared to what was going on in Australia at the time?
Well, it was quite different, but the Count Bishops, which is what they were called at the time, the name got shortened later to Bishops, but the Count Bishops weren't a punk band. Okay, they were more a high energy rhythm and blues band, and a lot of people say to me, "Oh, it must have been an exciting time to be in London. Then there's all this stuff going on, punk music and all the rest of it." But I must tell you that I had no contact with any of that while I was there, and part of the reason was because when I jumped on the plane to go to England to start working with the Count Bishops, I had maybe $20 in my pocket, and for most of the time, for the rest of the time I was there, I had very little more than that. Anyway,
in other words, we didn't make any money. I got it. Yeah,
you're quick. You're very quick, Grant.
I am quick.
No.
So the Count Bishops just kind of fit in along with what was going on in the London scene. No big deal.
Look,
you coexisted.
Have you heard of you've heard of Dr. Feelgood?
I have.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Feelgood, the Count Bishops are more like we weren't the same as Dr. Feelgood, but we were in the same genre. Okay, which was high energy rhythm and blues type music, rock and roll, whatever you like to call it. And we were undoubtedly well acceptable as far as the punks were concerned, because we did many gigs where the crowd was predominantly punk audiences. But we weren't trying to be the Sex Pistols or the Damned or anything like that, but, I mean, you would obviously know of Lemmy Kilmister, Motorhead.
Yes.
Well, we did quite a lot of different gigs with those guys, actually, even had one 30-day tour of the UK, which we were to do with Motorhead, which lasted 3 days.
Okay, now you have to go and we're gonna have to clip this. So, tell us about the Motorhead gig that lasted 3 days. Why did it last 3 days?
Let me lay the groundwork. Motorhead were on the same record label as us, the Count Bishops at the time in London. But we both have a new album coming out. Okay. So the record company decided it would be good if we went and did a 30-day tour all around the UK with the two bands, double headliner. Okay. So we all met in Shepherd's Bush in London, jumped on the tour bus, and away we went. Okay. We did the first gig, and then we did the second gig, and then we got down to the third gig, which was down in Torquay, I believe. And Filthy Phil, who was the drummer, the angry ant in Motorhead at that time, they finished their show that night. We'd already done our bit and gone back to the hotel, which was across the road from theirs. And we heard all this screaming and yelling going on when they came back from their gig. Okay. Anyway, so we thought, what's that? Next thing you know, there's this banging on the door of our sort of little apartment we were staying in there. And we opened the door, and there was Motorhead's roadie, Scottish guy. He's tears running down his face. What's going on, man? Anyway, turns out there was a lady by the nickname was Motorcycle Irene, who I won't give you a description, but use your imagination. She was a buxom lass with free with her favours. And anyway, the roadie, God love him, thought that he had a connection with her and she was going to be his girlfriend. And he came back from the gig after packing up Motorhead stuff to find her in bed with Filthy Phil. At which point, it started out yelling and screaming and turned into a fist fight. And they rolled down the stairs out of the hotel, and Phil broke his wrist. Okay, so that was the end of that tour.
Wow. There you have it.
But we had quite an association with Lemmy and his little band, because we did a number of other shows at different times with him, and we did a big show in a place called the London Roundhouse with the Motorhead, who called themselves Iron Fist and the Hordes of Hell that night because they had a contractual issue. But we were backstage, getting ready to go on, and Lemmy arrived, and he came into the back room, and he had this copper tube hanging around his neck, and a plastic bag full of this powder stuff, right? And he went around everybody in the dressing room, stuck his tube into the bag, and shoved it up there. So everybody went. got a lot in, and on we went, right. And by the time we got on and we started playing, we did our whole set, which was timed to be about 45 minutes or so, and we did the whole set in 30 minutes.
God.
Oh, there you go.
It's rock and roll, mate. It's rock and roll.
That is rock and roll.
These days, I must confess, I left my past well behind me, and I live a rather what's the word? Conservative lifestyle. I've never been a great drinker, and I still don't drink much at all. And my days of multiple joints and whatever else happened to be handy are long behind me, way behind me now. I'm 75, and I'm determined to make at least 76.
Good man.
So what are you doing now? I mean, other than being 75 and your goal is to get 76. Are you doing anything musically now that I'm unaware of? Ashley might be aware, but I'm unaware. What are you doing now?
Well, I have a number of things going on, but my main thing at the moment is a 4-piece blues-based band, which I do. I've held a residency with that in Sydney for the last 7 years. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Not always the same lineup. I tend to have a bit of a cycling kind of lineup. I've got a really solid lineup at the moment, but I've done it in duo mode, acoustic duo, trio at different times. I cycle different players through. You mentioned the fact that at the start of this little chat, you call me a legend. Okay.
Wow.
Much as I appreciate that, I prefer to be called a near myth. Okay.
Okay, damn it! I'll call you an icon then.
No, don't call me that. Whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter
miss.
is,
Come on, come on.
Not miss. You got it wrong. Near myth.
Oh, a near myth.
Yeah.
Words matter. I guess.
Words they do matter. But anyway, I've been around long enough now, and I'm notorious enough that I have a reputation with many of the Australian musicians that are happy to join me and perform. And I love that. Also, I mean, Ashley will know about this. I occasionally put together a lineup of some guys that I've got and go out as Buffalo Revisited.
Oh,
yes.
And I do that not because it's my great dream to do it. I do it because I continually have people asking me to do Buffalo shows, and I try to avoid them as much as I can because there's something creepy about a 75-year-old fella trying to prance around the stage pretending he's 21. Okay, but nonetheless.
Well, are you wearing tight leather pants and like a shiny shirt or what?
Of course.
Of course. Yeah, then you're fine prancing around like you're 21 then.
No, I don't quite go down that path anymore, Grant. But I do wear different outfits when I'm
okay.
But what I do, you see, is when somebody says to me, Dave, will you please do this, and I'll pay you this amount of money, and if there's enough zeros on the end of it, I'll say yes. Okay?
Well, I mean, you have to support yourself. I get it.
Well, I don't really have to, but I feel that I ought to. That's it, you know. But
Well, it's not like
but
you,
any,
but you still have that passion to play, though.
I do. I
You'd
love
love to
playing.
be
You
out
know,
there. You'd want to be out there singing those songs and entertaining. I mean,
not
it's
those
in your
songs. Not
bloodline.
those songs. Not those particular
Well, I
songs.
mean, well, okay.
You know what I do these days. I've never stopped writing. You know, and I do fair amount of stuff that you would never have heard, or nor would anybody else really, apart from if they come to my gigs, with a fair sprinkling of classic blues things, rhythm and blues stuff. I haven't played guitar for years, but now I'm playing guitar again. Okay, because I love the guitar, even though I'm not a very good player. I am a very solid rhythm guitarist.
Well, what
And
do you,
it,
just to get geeky here, Dave, what are you playing? What type of guitar are you playing? Oh, look at that. It's right there. Telecaster, what,
this is actually a profile Telecaster, but I've had a lot of work done to it. Okay, I have a set of Fender Custom Shop Texas Specials,
yeah.
and I've got body through for the strings. That doesn't come standard. I've got locking tuners, and I've had my favorite luthier turn it into a serious instrument.
Very nice.
All I need is to be a serious player. That then
Yeah,
would be
but
perfectly
you're
matched.
playing blues-based stuff. Telecaster fits that bill.
Yes, I have a number of other guitars actually as well. I've got a 1930s Dobro resonator. I've got another Telecaster which has got humbuckers on it with hole switching. I've got an Epiphone Les Paul. What else have I got? I've got a Gretsch Bo Diddley reissue, the square guitar. So I've got
One of those. You've got one of those. How cool.
I've got a Maton acoustic with AP5 pickup on it. I've got a 335 type of. Yeah, I've got quite a collection of them. Anyway.
Yeah, I
I've
guess
got-
so. For not playing guitar and kind of abandoning guitar back in the day, you seem to have a good collection. Ashley,
Well, I never lost the love of it.
I
Go on.
understand
never
what
lost
you. I get it. I get it. I might not play all that often, but I love it. Ashley, go ahead. Ask the gentleman some questions. Go ahead.
Okay. In 2000, Dave, you released your debut album, Lay Down with Dogs.
Oh, you got one there. Look at that. Well done. Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
Yes. And this, to me, I reckon this is a bit of a rockabilly, got a bit of a country feel about it as well. Would that be fair? How did this all come about, this album?
Well, I'd been working with a band called the Headhunters, which is something I formed with Nick Cox from Rose Tattoo and Mark Evans from AC/DC. It went through a few lineup changes and ended up, being a five-piece, which was pretty good. And we made an album with that. And around about the same time, I was contacted by a local guy here, Simon Carey, who was working for a radio station and also had a little record label. And he wanted to do an album, which he was already doing it with a guy called John Russell, who was originally in a band called Flake back in the 70s. Great guitar player, John. And he'd written a whole bunch of songs and was working with a thing called JR and the Barkings. And anyway, they put down all the tracks for this album. And Simon approached me to contribute vocals on it, which I did on about 10 songs on this album. At the time, I did it purely as a session musician, just a session singer, which is not something I do very often, but I did in that particular case. So that happened. And then just afterwards, Simon said to me, he said, Dave, how come you've never done a solo album? I said, well, I've been kind of busy with bands all the time, for one thing, and plus nobody's ever really asked me, And he said, well, look, if you would like to do one, I'll be prepared to finance it for you. And I thought, well, if somebody's going to throw money at me,
Look, it's like dropped into your lap.
Well, that's a story of my life, Grant. You know, things drop into my lap. It's like talking to you in Ohio. You know what I mean? It's like, how did this happen?
Yeah, why not? Ohio's a great
Well,
place.
a lot of my career, I've felt that that's kind of the way it's kind of happened. I never started out to be a singer. I started out thinking I was going to be a guitar player. Became a singer by default.
Mhm.
Really, and the thing with Buffalo, the way that we got our original contract with Phonogram, the band was feeling pretty good about itself. So we walked into the offices of Phonogram, plonked ourselves at the reception desk, and said, "We need to speak to your A&R man." And the girl behind the desk looked at us like we were sort of, Martians or something.
That's pretty
And we
bold,
said,
though.
no, we need to speak to him, and he needs to speak to us. So she said, "Hang on a minute." She picked up the phone, and next thing you know, we were in the office of the A&R man. His name was Dermot Hoy. I still remember it. And he listened to us, and before we knew it, we had a recording contract,
Wow.
and it just kicked off from that. But you see, with the solo album, I had a bunch of songs that I written, and when Simon came along and offered that opportunity, I have a very good friend who sadly is not well at the moment, but John B, who had a studio in his shed at the back of his house. So I started recording that with him working the board, and laid down most of the stuff that I had with myself, an acoustic guitar and a couple of electric guitar parts. And then I brought in the guys that I'd been working with in the Headhunters, and they put down drums and some backing vocals here and there, real guitar parts, bass parts, keyboards. And next thing I know, I had this album which Ashley just waved at us there before, and suddenly I had a solo career, which I had not expected. So I didn't do a lot of shows really, because even though it was kind of what's the word? It was an honor really to be given the opportunity, and I quite enjoyed it. I never really felt that I was actually a solo artist. I like being a member. I like working with other people in situations where I'm not the dictator. I don't like that. I really believe if you're going to work with other people, other musicians and talented people, then it's no good having one vision, one monochrome vision of what you should do in those situations. You must leave yourself open and allow everybody that contributes to be able to contribute, to come up and say, "Look, Dave, I think if we did this here," rather than what you originally came up with, and then listen to that, because what's the point? It's like having a car, you've got a Ferrari, and somebody who knows how to work on it and is an expert at it. What do? You start attacking it with your own hammer and wrench? No. You get people that know what they're doing and that you respect, and you give them that respect. That's what I like about bands. It's not one vision in a band by one person is not a good idea. You have to share that. You have to be open to each other, and unless you do that, then you're kidding yourself.
So this solo project landed in your lap. Did you
Yes.
assemble how, as far as musicians? I mean, what did you handle on this? Did you get studio people? Did you get people that you knew to play on this record?
I got people I knew. I got people that I've been working with already. I mean, if you want to hear a really great band, you need to hear the Headhunters. Okay, now, the Headhunters started out as a, once again, you talk about things falling into my lap. Okay, I'd just come back from England after working with the Count Bishops over there, and basically I sort of arrived back the same way I arrived in England, which was, the arse hanging out of my pants and no money in my wallet. Anyway, so and about the same time, I mean, you must know of Rose Tattoo, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, they're well known across the world. Mick Cox, who was the original and the best rhythm guitar player in Rose Tattoo, had just arrived back from America because he'd been over there touring with a band called Heaven, an Australian band that went over and did a whole bunch of shows over there.
Dave, don't mean to interrupt,
Yes.
but Heaven, that got a CD reissue, I think, on Rock Candy.
Yeah, Rock Candy.
I've got that CD. It's got like a
Yep.
red album cover. Yes, I'm fully aware of that. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and as I say, at the same time, Mark Evans, who'd been AC/DC's bass player for quite a long time, especially almost all the time when Bon was singing with the band, he'd also got back from an overseas trip. So we all kind of landed in Sydney at the same time, and you know, we used to congregate with a drummer friend in Coxey's basement in North Bondi, and. We in typical fashion, we made a lot of noise, and I'm pissing off all the neighbours, who eventually said, "Look, guys, you know, we don't mind the music, but God, it's driving us crazy, you know." So we had to find somewhere else to just do our rehearsing or jamming, which was we weren't really rehearsing it; we were just jamming. And there was a pub up the road called the Bondi Royal, which had a big back room with two pool tables in there that never seen nothing ever happened in there really. So we approached the publican and said, "Do you mind if we were to, you know, come up and use your back room to rehearse in?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, that's cool." He says, "As long as you allow me to let punters in." So we said, "Well, if you're going to do that, then you've got to supply us a bottle of whiskey every time we rehearse."
At least, Dave. At least that.
So that's what we did, you know. And the funny thing was that we, you know, the first time we did it, a couple of people wandered in from the main bar and watched us. It's very hard to rehearse when you got people watching you. You know what I mean? You know, when you're rehearsing, you're supposed to make a few mistakes and fix them. You know? But when you got punters watching you, it's kind of embarrassing if you have to stop and say, "Hang on a minute, the drums, you're missing the blur," you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way that the Headhunters started, really. And, you know, we did a couple of rehearsals there, and by the third time we rehearsed, it was obvious that actually it was no longer a rehearsal. We had a gig going on. And we ended up doing 3 nights a week there for probably 18 months, I suppose. And you know, we were getting paid for it and free whiskey all the time, and you know, and you know, and but you know, the thing about it was never supposed to be a band. It was just, you know, we're a bunch of mates getting together and just saying, let's just jam because we need to keep our fingers moving, you know. And naturally, what happened over a period of time was that, you know, Mick got asked to sort of retour with Rose Tattoo. Mark had other bits and pieces come at him, and so the lineup. I mean, I was the main one that stayed there all the time. I was always the bloke standing at the front, playing rhythm guitar, harmonica, and being you know, being Mr. Good Vibes. But you know, it changed lineups a couple of times, and we ended up with a solid 5-piece. I was playing with guitar, harmonica, and vocals, of course. And then we had a young guy called Steve Edmonds that we brought into the band. He was just a guy from the western suburbs, and his mate came to one of their gigs and said, "You need to get Steve up for a jam." And I said, "Oh shit, here we go." And he got up and he blew me away, you know. So we said, okay, so we got him involved. We had a double bass player, Paul Robert Burton, who's a fantastic musician, a keyboard player, Mike Gubby, was originally a band called the Dynamic Hypnotics, and a drummer, Paul DeMarco, who is currently touring and playing with Rose Tattoo.
I was going to say Paul DeMarco rings a bell.
And so is Mark Evans.
Great drummer, Paul.
And Mark Evans is now with Rose Tattoo as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, he's no longer with Rose Tattoo. He was for a while, but he's not with them anymore. You know, Mark just came back from being over in Europe and Scandinavia. He does it about once a year. He goes over and has every AC/DC fan band paying him big bucks to sit in with them.
Oh, wow.
Hey, a gig's a gig, Dave.
That's it, yeah.
A gig's a gig.
Hey,
Yeah,
Dave, just getting
Well,
back-
he has a great time. Everything's paid for. He takes his lady over with him, and they live high on the hog, wandering around Europe and Scandinavia. Sorry,
Dave, just
actually, you
getting
have something to say.
Just getting back to this album, but this wasn't your proper first solo release. You also released a single in '76 where you done a Beatles cover. I don't want to spoil the party.
Uh-oh.
Did you have to bring that up?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I hate
you
Beatle
got no-
covers. Dave, I can't believe you covered the Beatles. Good God. I thought we were pretty tight. Now I learned you've covered Beatles songs. Oh, no.
How did that come about, Dave?
Well, it was a record company thing. You know what I mean? I've mentioned before when we were talking about how we were always being pushed to be more commercial, which I didn't like it. But I eventually succumbed to the idea that it would be a good idea if I did just a solo single. So that was what I had no control over that. And believe me, I'm sorry that I ever did it, and I'm even more sorry that you brought it up, you bastard. Yeah, no. So I never felt comfortable with that. I didn't even have control over what was going on at all. There was an engineer, producer engineer who had his idea of what it was supposed to sound like, and basically everything was recorded, and they just took me into the studio and said, "Right, sing these words."
Wow. Well, I never knew it existed.
So I can sing words.
I never knew it existed either until it's actually a bonus track on Average Rock and Roller.
Yeah.
So
that's
that's
about
how I
where it
discovered
belongs. You don't. This is the thing about this game, and it is a game, really. You're always in situations where somebody is trying to tell you what you should do, management or agents or publicists or anything like that, and most of them, they're talking through their arse, man. They don't know what they're talking about. They got their own little agenda, and they think that you are the one that's supposed to deliver it for them,
Well, those guys usually are musicians and they're business people.
There you go, accountants telling you how to play guitar. Yeah, good on you.
It's the story we've heard forever, Dave. You could go back to all these different bands, There's always this problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And there are times, I personally have always tried to do what I want to do and basically ignore all that stuff. But there are times when it becomes very hard to actually ignore it, especially when you're in a situation where you've got a band, for instance, that's supporting 3 roadies, an 8-ton truck, a huge PA system and lights, a manager, an agent, a publicist, and the manager's girlfriend is your supposed wardrobe lady. So you're supporting all these ancillary bits and pieces which you've been told you must have, and you become a cash cow, really.
Mm-hmm.
When Buffalo, when we were going at our peak, were averaging 12 gigs a week. All right. On the weekend, Friday night, we'd be doing 2 gigs on a Friday night. We went to Melbourne once, drove the 600 miles to Melbourne, and did 8 gigs in 2 days. All right,
Wow.
right, and then drove home.
But you loved every minute of it, Dave. You did.
Well, when you're young,
Right.
you're not thinking about, gee, I wonder what my retirement fund's looking like or anything like that. All you're thinking, and this is, I must admit, I was thinking, wow, I got involved in the best party ever. And it's still going. It's been going for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
But you do, you find yourself in situations where financial concerns start to weigh on the whole process, and this is true, I'm sure, of almost every band that's ever been put together. And sometimes, luckily, we never got to the stage where we were millions of dollars in debt, but we were certainly tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and that's 1970s thousands, not.
So that would equal, I'm not going to do the math, but it's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, you factor in the consumer price index or whatever it happens to be, what I mean, and it becomes a lot. We had an 8-ton truck, which was custom built, right? Because our manager said, well, you've got to have it custom built to fit all the gear in, okay? And we had a 15-seater minibus so that the band members could sort of travel in comfort. Well, that was bullshit for a start. It wasn't comfortable at all. But anyway, and we drove across the Nullarbor. Do you know what the Nullarbor is, Grant?
I do not.
The Nullarbor is a desert, okay, which stretches between Sydney or the east coast of Australia and the west coast of Australia, all right? And it sort of borders what was called the Great Australian Bight, which is a big curving coastline of about 3,500 miles, okay?
Oh, my God.
And we drove from Sydney to Perth and then toured around Western Australia, up and down the west coast, and then back again across to the east coast. And that's the sort of thing we were doing, with an 8-ton truck and a 15-seater minibus. I remember we drove across the Nullarbor there, and at that time, the road, about halfway through, there was over 300 miles of dirt road. It wasn't sealed, okay? And this is a major highway between the east coast and the west coast of Australia. And we're driving through it, and it's about 40-odd degrees. No air conditioning in the vehicle we were in. The only way we could keep cool, which was, we were kidding ourselves, was to leave the windows open. So we were covered in dust. We looked like a bunch of gollywogs when we finally arrived in Perth. All our hair was stuck out, But anyway, that's what we used to do,
Yeah. Well, you
and we
were
had to
young.
support all that. Well, we were young, but we also had another advantage going.
What's
we were
that?
stupid. We were stupid.
Stupid. Well, there's a lot of bands, There's a lot of bands. You give it a shot. You may go through 3 bands, 2-3 bands,
Yes.
and then by the time you realize, well, I don't think it's going to happen, then you have to get a real job. But you never know.
I've never done that.
When you're young and you're trying, you're doing the best. You never know.
The whole paradigm of record companies and publishers and that is built on that very basic idea.
It is.
They can, exploit young guys who are silly enough to sign away their lives and work their butt off and make money for the record companies, and that's what they do. Because they know eventually, just like you said, the guys are going to say, "Oh man, I'm going to get a real job. I've got a girlfriend now. I may have a baby
Yeah,
soon.
you have a
You've got to
baby. You have a girlfriend. She wants a house. You're used to batching it in an apartment with all these guys living together, and you grow up. And
well, I've never grown up. I've got older,
no,
but I don't
know that
think
from
I've quite
you.
grown up yet. But nonetheless, I mean, those pressures are ever present. Once you get past a certain age, and you have to somehow deal with that.
Well, what did you end up doing, Dave? What did you end up doing after you gave it all up?
Well, I didn't give it all up.
Well,
I was still doing it.
Well, I know, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, look, with Buffalo, I got to the stage after 5 albums, and the last 2 of which I wasn't particularly happy with personally. I was given the opportunity, and once again, fell into my lap.
Mm-hmm.
I got the offer from England to go and join the Count Bishops, and I thought, well, here's my escape route. So I took that, and I arrived there in the middle of winter. Almost, well, it was freezing cold when I got off the plane, and I was still wearing the stuff that I was wearing in Australia. A cotton shirt, and a denim jacket.
I'm not making fun. Well, I'm kind of making fun. But when I
go on, I
think
can
of the
take it.
Count Bishops, and you're talking, what year is this? Give me a year.
1977.
It's 1977. I'm thinking of a band, like a British band in the mid 60s, like in 1964. They're the Count Bishops, and they're all dressed up like something from the Queen's Court or something. It just,
No, well, it's not like that. We had leather jackets on.
I know, but it just seemed, I get an image in my monkey brain,
Yeah,
1964. We're,
yeah,
we're
I
the
can dig
Count
it.
Bishops.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that name, the Count Bishops, comes from New York. There was a New York street gang called the Count Bishops. Okay, and before I was asked to join the band, they had a lead singer who was from New York.
Oh,
His name was Mike Spencer, and because originally the Count Bishops were called Chrome, which
Chrome?
Chrome. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, Chrome. All right.
Yeah, and really, I think they needed something a bit more. What would you say? A
1964.
bit more fancy. Yeah, that's right. Well, I think the Count Bishops would certainly have fitted quite well into the 1964 scene. Because the sort of music we were playing. And I came to it late, as you would understand here. I was Johnny come lately. It's funny. I'll tell you this. I took that opportunity because it seemed to me like it was a great way to get away from under what I was feeling, the burden I was feeling as Buffalo was winding down. And also, from Australia, the idea of being able to go and work in England with a band that had just signed a recording deal was a huge thing. I thought, wow, this, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere.
Well, no, considering what you went through, you're thinking, hey, this is an opportunity.
That's right.
We might be able to change the world. I get it. I would have done the same damn thing, Dave. I would have done the same thing if I was in your situation.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, I must say, I got off the plane. I was picked up by the boys in their Ford Transit van, and we drove into London and stopped at the pub on the way, of course. And they said, "Man, you're going to be part of the band. You're going to learn how to drink English beer." So I drank a couple of pints of warm English beer. I got used to it over a couple of years, though, Grant.
Oh, I'm sure you did, Dave. I'm sure you did.
But so they had already laid down all the musical tracks, the instrument tracks for their first album. And I got off the plane, and I was in the studio 36 hours later with sheets of paper, and I did all the vocals in 2 sessions, two 4-hour sessions on the album.
This wasn't your first rodeo.
And I hadn't even. What's that?
This wasn't your first rodeo, so you want me to lay down some vocals? Oh, I got this.
Well, I've always personally, a lot of people seem to think this is hard. I've never found it very difficult, frankly. You play a bit of music and say, look, these are words. Listen to it a couple of times, 1, 2, 3, away you go. And one thing I know about myself is that when I do sing, I only sing like Dave Tice. Okay, that's all. I don't sing like Robert Plant or Elvis Presley or any of those other people. I only sing like me. So if you want me to sing, you've got to come together with the idea that what you're going to get is me singing. And I know how to do that. Okay? It's pretty straightforward. A lot of people seem to make it.
When I need a Dave Tice vocal with my next project, I know where to go.
You're going to pay me a lot of money to go on a plane, mate.
I'll never have a project, Dave. The last time I played out in a gig, listen to this, Dave. Just between us. The last time I played out on a gig was in 1989.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you live?
Well, I have a job.
No, but I mean, how do you live? How's your soul feeling?
Oh, it's been empty ever since 1989, but I've learned to adapt.
You learned to live with that, have you?
Well, I was young then. I was good. I would do it in a second, but
Yeah.
there's
Well,
not been really an opportunity.
You know,
And I'm
opportunities are
lazy, to be quite honest, Dave. For me
Well,
to
so
put
am I.
something together, ugh.
All you need is a couple of friends with the same
Yeah,
mindset.
everybody's
That's all you
old.
need.
No one cares anymore, you know?
Oh, damn you. Damn you.
It's
Don't
not
say that.
me. It's not
Yeah.
me. Anyway, Ashley,
You're coming up with excuses, man.
I know. Well, I've been having excuses since 1989, so I'm used to all of them. Ashley, I'm sure you have more to
Well, you
ask.
see,
Yeah, I do. I
Go
do.
ahead.
I'm
Okay, Dave. Now, was it your idea to reform Buffalo as today, as Buffalo revisited? How did all this get? Was there an interest out there for the band to get back together, or bit of a
yes,
management?
yes. It was never my plan. Actually, I must tell you, it was never my plan to do that. And the only reason it ever came together was because I don't know if you've heard of a thing called Evil Invaders. There was a mob that used to do small festivals, one in Melbourne and one in Sydney every year, sort of heavy rock festivals, and they contacted me out of the blue. Once again, Grant falling into your lap, and they said, "Oh, we'd love to have Buffalo come and play at this festival." And I said, "Well, Buffalo broke up, it's 1977, mate, And they said, "Well, it doesn't matter, Dave." He said, "If you put something together,
Mhm.
and as long as you in front,
As long as you're
running
in,
it,
it's Buffalo.
that's right,
Yeah.
I must tell you that I felt kind of embarrassed about that, to be honest with you. I never really wanted to reform Buffalo, but they threw a number at me that I
They
couldn't
threw
say no
money
to.
at you.
They threw money at me. That's right. And I knew it was not going to be possible to get, any of the original guys for various reasons, which I won't go into. Okay, not least of which the main one really is that most of them hadn't played any musical instruments since 1978 or
Me
something.
either.
Anyway,
No, I can still play. There you go.
And match fitness is very important, especially when what I was seeing in front of me was a one-off in a festival situation. So I put together a lineup, and I put it together very quickly from people that I knew and could rely on, and we did it. We did the show, and almost before I sort of got home from doing the show, I had offers coming at me from Melbourne. Okay, and I thought to myself, you know what? I don't really want to do this, but so I thought to myself, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up with a figure that will scare these buggers away. All right. So I said, okay, and I'll tell you what I did. I said, I want 10 grand in cash, and I want return airfares for every member of the band. I want all equipment supplied, separate accommodation for every member of the band,
All right.
and a transport to and from everything.
All right, here. Here's your check.
That'll
Easy.
quieten the buggers down.
And what happened? What happened?
They said, okay.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
But did they give you M&Ms in a bowl and they took out all the brown M&Ms in your...
No, but they gave me a couple of bottles of whiskey too.
God damn. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been watching this show, you know whiskey keeps popping its head up.
It does.
Here I thought it was all about the brown M&Ms, but no, it's the whiskey.
No, I don't. Personally, I don't really like whiskey, but it does have a nice medical effect. It's like medicine for me. It's a bit of a medical thing,
I understand.
It clears my vocal passages.
I understand.
Yeah, but anyway, so that basically tells you, Ashley, that kind of set the thing off. And I must tell you, without going into details, that I copped a lot of flack from ex-members who were really pissed off
I
that I was
bet.
actually doing it.
Yeah.
and and that's a long, long story there, and a lot of things that I could say about that I really shouldn't say about other people. Anyway, I'm so bloody minded that other people's displeasures don't really change my mind. Okay, and since those first couple of things, it's been an ongoing thing. Almost every year, somebody contacts me and says, "Please come and play here, and we'll pay you this, lots of money." And I keep saying, "Well, must I?" and
Are you
that's
sure,
what happens.
Dave, you're looking
It's
at
one of
this
those
in the right way? I mean, a gig's a gig.
Yeah,
I
but
know you're a purist and everything, but
well, I am a bit of a purist.
what would Ozzy Osbourne do?
He'd probably fall off his motorbike again. But anyway, we shouldn't be saying things about this about somebody who's passed away. And Ozzy, God love him.
Well, no, it wasn't Ozzy. It wasn't Ozzy. Sharon was going, well, we're going to do this. Ozzy, get your ass out there. It's not anything to do with Ozzy. Just wanted to stay home and hang out. Ozzy didn't want to do all that crap.
Which only proves that old saying: behind every great man is a good woman.
It's true. It's true.
Grant, I'm addicted to this whole thing. I'm addicted to live performance. Okay, I've loved it ever since I first found out that I could actually get away with it. And
Get away
I have a
with it.
phrase because people, well, that's what we do, really. I mean, let's face it. It's a very self-indulgent thing. Reality, getting up there and dancing around or whatever you do, and having people fucking yell and scream at you and say how wonderful you are. I mean,
Well,
come on, let's get real about it.
you're looking too deep
But one thing I
into
will
it.
say,
If you're giving pleasure to these
I always look
people
too deep
that
into it.
want to hear your music, I mean, what
I know
what
that.
better?
That-
What
that's
is
why I
better
still
than that?
Well, there's nothing much better than that. That's why I'm still doing it. I'm not immune to these
Speaking
things.
to the choir here. Yeah, go ahead.
But one thing I say, and it's a phrase that I use a lot, one thing about music, it's not always put food on the table, okay? But it's always fed my soul. And to me, that's more important than just about anything else, It doesn't matter how much money you make, how many cars or houses you have.
Mm-hmm.
You must have, if you have happiness and enjoyment out of your work, then you have everything, really. The money, bugger that. I'd like to have lots of money, but I don't care that much,
Well, based on that, and now that this interview has probably gone an hour and 45 minutes as we look at it, I think that's a good place to end. I think that's a good place to end. So what's going on right at this moment with you, though, Dave, before we wrap this dog up? What is happening in your world right at this moment?
Well, after years of being on the road, I reached the point where I realized that at my age, I should start getting a bit dignified, okay? And so I don't gig as often as I used to, and I only gig when I want to, really. But I have a residency at the moment, which I do with here in Sydney. I only do it once a month, okay? It's a small room, and it's a place where I'm comfortable, and I know there's only one reason there are people in that room, and that's because they want to come and listen to me play with my bandmates, my friends. They're my friends, But I like to make a few recordings. I've done a few recordings independently over the last few years, and I will probably do some more. It's it's music. I love it. I can't stop doing it. When I was younger and I first found out how much I loved it, I decided at that point, I was about 17 probably, that I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. And so far, touch wood, I have been doing exactly that.
Well, what better than that? So,
One last question.
go
For you,
ahead,
Dave.
Ashley, go.
Yeah, one more. With your career spanning well over 50 years, what's the biggest highlight of your career?
The fact that I've made it to 75, that's a highlight.
Why am I not surprised by you saying that? Just from the time we've spent together, of course that's it. Of course.
It's all been fun. There's been highlights and there's been lots of lowlights, but it's been a journey, and it's been an interesting journey. And I don't think you can say any more than that, really. We are born, we're all like this. We are born and we go on this journey. Some of us have uncomfortable, unpleasant journeys. None of us have the perfect journey.
No.
But one thing that we do know is that one day we're going to be dead, okay? And
Let's leave it on a high note. I'm just giving you Dave, I'm just giving you shit. Yes, we will all be dead.
Yeah, I know you are.
We will all be wearing
You're
dirt
typical buddy
shirts.
American to give me shit. Go on, stop it. no, but we're going to be dead, And so what we have to do is live a life as much as we can on our own terms and make the most of it. Enjoy what we are given. And this life is something we're given. It's not something we made ourselves. We're just plonked here, and hey, make it good while you're here.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you so much for being on the show. Very much appreciated.
Yes, Dave Tice, everybody.
My pleasure.
Buffalo.
My pleasure.
Go check out some of that old Buffalo. Hell, go check out Dave's solo career. Show that CD, Ashley, for God's sakes.
There we go.
The
I am
man.
with dogs.
Dave
Get on
Tice, the
Bandcamp.
man, the
Get on
myth.
Bandcamp. You can find stuff there.
Are there any links though, Dave?
The
before we
myth.
wrap- Are there any links you want me to share down below? So, what's coming up, gigs, anything you want me to share?
My Facebook page. I don't know if you use Facebook, but I have a Facebook.
I do.
Right, Dave Tice.
Okay.
And you'll find all kinds of information there. Gigs, short videos, live shows I've done recently. It just goes on and on. You'll need a week to sit down and go through it all, right?
You'll need a whole week.
So Facebook, Dave Tice.
All right, cool. The link's down below. Give Dave some
exaggerating,
love.
but-
Go check out some Buffalo. Everybody, you know how we do this here. We're just trying to turn you on to music. Ladies and gentlemen, give Ashley an applause. Thank you, Ashley, for bringing this together. Dave Tice, everybody. We will see you on the next one. Keep it clean, everybody. Wrap the rascal and I don't know. Don't slide off the edge. There you go. We'll see you in a minute.